A lot of producers don't even think about how the structure of their beats could affect whether or not their beats sell. If you haven't really considered that, now is a good time to start. Let's get into it. And you know YouTube's algorithm plays way too much, so please subscribe. I've been making these videos since like 2006 and I still don't have 100K, so help me reach that goal. And then I'll stop asking, maybe. My video interview with GC Beats has gotten a lot of views. I think it's because we talked about beat structure and how to structure your beats and sequence them so that they're as marketable as possible. Even before I booked that interview with GC, the members of my mentorship program, Beat Club, which is part of the Music Entrepreneur Club, requested that I hold a session explaining to them how I structured and sequenced my beats. So, you know, that's one benefit of joining. If you wanted to join, I'm gonna have a link below. We just interact and have sessions and collaborate and do all types of stuff. But I wanted to share at least that portion of the video with you because it's fairly brief and clearly it's something that producers might want to see. It's a basic overview of how I sequence my beats. So if you're an advanced producer and you feel like I'm insulting your intelligence by telling you about, you know, song structure and sequencing and dynamics, save yourself the headache and go read classical literature or college algebra textbooks. For the rest of you, I hope this is helpful. The reason I like this program is because you can see everything out. I love the grid system. I don't know how people can use others. And I know FL, there is a grid system. It's just that you can go between a step sequencer and a whatever this is called. So, okay, Bufo wants to start on the basics. Track edits. Yeah, a 2-track would be great because then I can add some ideas and send them back to you. Cool. All right, there. 80. So I painted this on. As you can see, this drum loop is 4 measures. We know that because we have 1 count, 2 counts, 3 counts, 4 counts, 4 full measures. And if I copy and paste that, now I have 8. And if I copy and paste that, now I have 16. And if I add another 8, now I have 24. So 24 to me is great because we're in 4/4 and that number 4 becomes really important to us. Some of this is going to be basic, but this was requested. So let me just find a sample that's in 80 as well. So let me find something that's 80. Dang, there's nothing that's 80 here. All right. That's 80. There we go. So I'm going to use the same structure. I'm going to use 4 measure sections of this loop. Obviously, this is a pretty boring beat. I mean, forget the fact that I just, you know, used 2 different loops. For the record, I worked on both of these kits, so these are technically not just, you know, it doesn't matter. The point is not for me to show you how cool of a beat maker I am. I just want to show you what the structure is. So we have a 4 measure section here, 4 measure section here, 4, 4, 4, 4. And I like to lay it out this way because typically, especially if I'm in the mid-tempo range, I'm structuring my beat anticipating a rapper rapping on them or writing to them. And when I put them on BeatStars or when I send them out for placements, if that structure isn't clear, it can confuse the artist, especially if I'm not there. So if I decide, well, I'm going to try to, you know, I'm going to do a 3 measure bridge or, you know, some kind of non-traditional structure, that could confuse them if I'm not around to explain. But if I'm at the point where I'm working with the artist or the artist has my files, my wave or my stem files, and they're working, recording, they can rearrange it and restructure it as they please. And then if they want to come back to me and tell me, hey, I restructured it, what do you think? Can you work around my structure? Then yeah, I can. So I keep it as simple as possible and just with a standard sequence. And the standard song structure for pop, for R&B, for hip hop is 16 bar verse, 8 bar chorus. Sometimes you'll have 16 bar choruses, and sometimes you'll have 12 bar verses, and sometimes you'll throw in a bridge that's about eight bars as well. 8 bars and measures I'm using interchangeably. But for me, I just want quick and easy 16 measures of verse, which is these 4. And that makes it easy too, because everything's a multiple of 4. So I'm working in these 4-bar sections. So 4 times 4 is 16. That's 4. 4 times 2 is 8. That's 8. So this would be this would be verse here. You can add nice little notes. Actually, this helps me, especially if I'm recording with a musician. Here's the chorus, so I know where everything starts. How does that sound? Do you ever have your headphones on? It's just a really creepy sound that's being amplified by your mic. Gets picked up. I don't know if that was an animal or human. Yeah, a lot of rappers want 12-bar verses. And sometimes, probably not with an 80 beats per minute beat, but when you start getting into these slower tempos, like 50 beats per minute, a 16-bar verse, I'll show you. So a 16-bar verse here is 48 seconds. If I switch this down to 50 beats per minute, now it's 1 minute and 16 seconds. So it becomes kind of long. So you might want to cut that down to 12. I just kind of make that executive decision for the artist, but I try to make the structure as clear as possible, and that's kind of what I'm going to show you how to do. And sometimes, you know, they re-envision your structure and they just do what they do with it, and that's fine. But I want to make it as easy and accessible to the most amount of musicians who might be interested in writing or purchasing my beat. Okay, so starting out, as a matter of fact, what's missing here is an intro. So I'm going to insert 4 measures of intro. And here's a really just simple way to sequence this out. And as I'm sequencing, I'm keeping in mind structure, I'm keeping in mind dynamics. Dynamics are important because they signal the beginning and the end of these sections. And if you just are working with a loop, you know, these are all the same, right? So you can't tell between the first 4 measures of the verse or the second or the third or the fourth or the verses from the chorus, because right now they're all the same. This is different because there are no drums. And the dynamic is different because of it, where the dynamic is a lot heavier here once the drums drop in. So I'm just keeping it, I'm just keeping the intro short. You might want to do an 8 measure intro, but I'm doing it 4. Another thing you can do too, I don't know what's happening in my neighborhood. That's a dog. Another thing you can do to emphasize the dynamic is something like I don't know, a filter on the intro, on the sample. You can use this throughout. There's no rule. So this is a high pass. If it's a band pass, it's a little less jarring on the ears, and you can automate this. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to abruptly cut it off here. So here's the difference. That's with the filter. So now you're going to hear an even more difference between the intro and the verse. So this is going to be the first measure of the first verse. Fuller dynamic here. So it's kind of a crescendo up. So someone's rapping, and they're rapping throughout these 4 bars. or sorry, these 4 4-bar sections. Now, when the chorus comes in, I'm going to want there to be something to distinguish between this section and this section. The easiest way to do that is just change something in this 4-measure section leading up to the chorus. So if, for example, I wanted to bring back the filter and drop out the drums so it sounded more like the intro, this is what the last 4 measures of the verse are going to sound like going into the chorus. So this is a signal here that something's about to change. So this signals, okay, this is the end of the section. And the change here signals the beginning of a new section. And if the artist can count measures, then they'll count 16 and say, okay, cool, that's the end of the verse. Now we're to the chorus. That's why beats with hooks do well, I think. It's not just because the hook is dope, it's also because the structure is really clear. And artists like to have a clear structure. Another thing that I might do is add some kind of fill. Fills in music signal the end of a section. I mean, in rock too, at the end of a verse, going into a chorus, you might hear a crazy drum fill. That famous Phil Collins fill in Phil Collins fill, and he's actually a drummer. That leads up to the chorus section, that crazy one, and that goes from a very subdued verse into a really intense chorus. So it's not just hip hop. This isn't just a trick for rap music. How do I define a hook? Chorus, I use the two interchangeably. So it's the chorus song, the chorus section of a song. It usually contains some kind of refrain, some kind of repetition. So let's try that. So now this feels more like a change. Still rapping, but this is signaling you to finish up your verse. Now we're back actually back into the chorus. Because we're counting in 4/4, so we're four measures. And then within that, there are a lot of little tricks that you can use. So sometimes I drop out the first count of a section. And that signals this is a new section within the verse. Because there are all these subsections. Just taking the instrumental elements out and leaving the drums. But I'm not really doing it haphazardly. Like I wouldn't just do it, like this. Not that that doesn't sound good, it can. But I like to keep my stuff more structured so it's not throwing the artist off. We can always do that after the fact. That's where production comes in. But right here, you see a very clear structure. And honestly, I would duplicate this structure in the chorus as well. Maybe not the filter. Then what happens is now that signals the end of the chorus. And the chorus and the verse need to be these distinctive sections. And so we're signaling the end of one into the other, and then the end of that one into the next. So most of the time, all producers really need to do is remove stuff and add stuff to create a dynamic and to also signal the different sections of their beat. Is it common to put the chorus after the intro, then onto the verse? Yeah, actually, that's how I normally do it. I'll show you an example after this. But do you have any questions about this really kind of more basic approach? I'll show you something. I guess it would be a little more advanced because it's a beat that I actually finished. Yeah, so just by removing the right things at the right time, exactly. It's really, dynamics are so simple. It's kind of like mixing. People want all these plugins and mix tricks, and really it's just a matter of using good sounds and panning and turning volumes up or down. At its core, that's what that is, and at the core of sequencing is adding stuff, subtracting stuff, and just making sections seem distinctive from one another. Because the thing about it is, like the same thing I say with marketing. Keep things as accessible as possible. So when I upload a track, and we're going to talk about this during the audit session where I look at your social media, your YouTube pages and everything, and give suggestions and give keyword research to help you, reach a wider audience. And that's going to be ongoing because it's ongoing for me.